Today, we are talking about choosing the correct controller for your WeatherTRAK replacement. If you recognize my partner in crime today, Danny Smith from Park West Landscaping, that's no coincidence because he is our first repeat guest. So I am happy to have with me the man, the myth, the legend, Danny Smith, water manager extraordinaire. Say hi to everybody.
Morning, everybody.
Thanks for joining me. Let's start off by saying when talking to my special guests, I always come up with the theme of the day with them. And so I think it's awesome that the first time you and I talked and we created a theme together, you chose choosing the right flow sensor for your project. And the second time you chose choosing the right WeatherTRAK. So I can see where the technology meets the business with you. Like it's all.
I may have made a few mistakes in the past, so anything I can do to help out the next guy.
It's training gold. Like it's a conversation that needs to be had for sure. So I think it's an exciting topic. While we are just getting started, please, everybody, use the chat box. Send us your questions all the way through. I will be trying to balance back and forth between training content and questions and making sure that you get responses to whatever questions you have. So on the bottom of your screen, you see the Q&A and the chat box. I will keep my eye on those. And please keep those questions coming because we value your insight. So let's get this thing underway. Today we are going to talk about, well, choosing the right WeatherTRAK controller for your project. And as we discuss these things, we're going to try and factor out what on-site conditions will require different WeatherTRAK hardware. And in this discussion, we're going to be throwing around 3 different types of hardware for your consideration. We'll talk about the WeatherTRAK LC, or the light commercial option. We'll talk about the Pro 3s and the features that those provide, as well as the top tier of WeatherTRAK management, the OptiFlow XR, right? So these are the 3 different types of hardware that we will be talking about and trying to figure out which solution will be best for you and for your site. Now, I think it's important to say before we get started that all of those platforms, all of those different solutions are WeatherTRAK solutions. So a lot of commonality between those 3 offerings, right? They're all coming from HydroPoint. They're all HydroPoint powered solutions, which means they provide that cloud-based central control factor. It's got the weather-based control, right? You can deliver weather-based irrigation to your stations and save the water. You've got the app access. You've got the website access. There's a lot of things that all of these controllers do that you can just depend on from any sort of WeatherTRAK, right? So most of the time we focus on the similarities. Today we're going to focus on the differences and what makes each individual type of controller unique. And when we do that, when I'm going through the process with a seller like Danny or one of our distributor partners, really when looking at a site, we have to qualify 2 things. We have to qualify the software that you're looking for and make sure that we have an application match and the controller that you choose has the features that you want. And then after we've done that, we need to qualify the hardware and make sure we get the cheapest, best controller replacement for you to get the WeatherTRAK project underway. So when I look at software, there's really one main thing that I'm talking about, and that is flow. Like I said, all the different controllers will give you the weather-based stuff or the individual station control, all of that. When I'm looking at qualifying a site for software, I really need to understand what that site or really that customer is looking for out of flow features. And that is to say that all WeatherTRAK have the ability to listen to a flow sensor. And what the controller does with that information varies depending on the type of hardware that you're doing or that you've got in the field. More specifically, when I'm qualifying a site, I need to know whether they want or need OptiFlow. And because if I'm going OptiFlow, there's just one choice on the hardware. You go for the OptiFlow controllers if you want the OptiFlow features, which from my perspective, and I'll bounce this to Danny, it really depends on whether you need those, right? With OptiFlow, we have an advanced configuration ability and a schedule optimization ability, right? The advanced configuration ability says that we can go onto a more advanced hydraulic system. We can have one main line with lots of controllers on it, or multiple points of connection and an advanced hydraulic configuration. And OptiFlow will be able to provide flow management in that scenario. So that really is the number one qualifier. Do you have a complex irrigation system where we want to be able to manage flow? Danny, is there anything that I missed on that? Is there anything that you look for to qualify a site?
You know, in regards to the OptiFlow, there's a lot of things that we were able to do before OptiFlow existed. You know, it wasn't too long ago that we were sitting there on a notepad and we were trying to work out the run times, the program, you know, total run times, and doing essentially, you know, the hard code of what OptiFlow is. And I'll admit, computer's better. You know, I've done some pretty interesting things. You know, we refer to a couple of sites as, you know, that was harder than programming Bellagio, you know, and the fountains there. So it's this system. What I've noticed is just it cleans it up and it provides a much better visual for us to understand. And anything that we can do, you know, one of the things that I don't think we talk about enough is smoothing out our mainline operations over that entire nighttime. Anything that we can do to limit going from, and I'll use the miles per hour analogy, from 10 miles per hour up to 90, down to 40, down to 20, up to 50. Anything that we can do to streamline that, you know, especially if we have a pump involved, is going to make things a lot easier for the piping system. So I can imagine the value of putting OptiFlow on a 30 or 40-year-old PVC system is going to provide a lot of benefit in terms of not getting past pipe velocity, not getting air in your lines, and really running your systems as efficiently as possible.
Absolutely. So there's a lot that goes into qualifying an OptiFlow site, and it's not only the advanced configuration, to your point. If you have a pump, just smoothing out that pump curve is enough of a value to upgrade, right, in my eyes, or at least to have the conversation with your customer. So knowing whether OptiFlow is a request or a requirement is a great first step. The other thing that I want to just plug, so let's summarize that from the big picture, right? Now, when we talk about the LC, the Pro 3, and the OptiFlow XR controllers, if I am breaking them down by flow features or flow management capabilities, when I think about the LC, I think about the simple flow configuration, one point of connection, one main line, and one controller, right? That's where the LC is going to shine. So in all of the applications, like a lot fit that description. So we take a step forward with the Pro 3 management. With the Pro 3, we're able to handle a more complex site. It's designed for commercial use. So the Pro 3 can handle as many as 4 points of connection. So if you've got multiple master valves and flow sensors, all leading back to the same controller, Pro 3 can be an option for that. It can also handle the looped main configurations and multiple main lines. And it really does a bang up job at flow management through a single controller. But if we go beyond that in the hardware configuration, that's where we get into the OptiFlow XR. That's where you have an advanced hydraulic configuration. One main line where multiple controllers are pulling that water from that main line, and they all have to share that information. And with WeatherTRAK, we share the information in the cloud. So cloud-based flow management allows the OptiFlow to orchestrate all of those controllers together.
Ben, what is the most extreme you've seen on the OptiFlow? What's the most extreme setup you've seen?
Well, I had the Cowboys in. The one that comes to mind is AT&T Stadium, just because it is mind-blowing. Like, I think out there they've got 17 controllers, 12, 9 of them are OptiFlow, 6 managers, 7 points of connection, all looped together through the main heart of the system. So we're orchestrating 7 different flow sensors to feed 9 different controllers on that.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Like, it's still a challenge just the stuff happens out there through their management and trying to drill into the data and see it. What about you? What's your most advanced configuration?
I want to say we're at 12 high capacity OXRs, 72s and 96s. We were able to combine quite a bit. This is the 4S Ranch down in San Diego. 12 OXR, high capacity OXR, 6 POCs to a looped main line. Which is interesting. So they're all 2-inch meters feeding into like a 4-inch racetrack type of thing. So that's been a lot of fun.
Yours was designed that way.
Yeah.
Mine was just built. The thing about AT&T Stadium is they just kept adding on to it. And so it's not like it had a sound design going in. When we got there, oh yeah, we built that lot 5 years after. So we just tacked on to the main line, add another point of connection, and there we go. So either scenario, OptiFlow is a great fit. Okay, do I have a question? Oh. All right, no questions. Somebody is intimidated by OptiFlow. Don't be intimidated. We've got plenty of training. I'm here to make it easy for you. All right, so when we come back to qualifying the software for a site, it really boils down to what flow features do we need, and just getting familiar with what the different levels of controller offer. And really that boils down to OptiFlow. Do you need OptiFlow? If you need OptiFlow, go with the XR controllers. If you need something less, or if you don't need OptiFlow, you can talk about whether the LC or the Pro 3 is the better solution for you. Something to keep in mind in this conversation, the only thing that stands out other than OptiFlow is the number of programs. I have had people buy the LC controller and think that it had the 8 programs that the Pro 3 came with. All that the programs manage in WeatherTRAK land is when a program will run, when you can allow irrigation. So the separate programs allow you to water different parts of your property at different times of day. So if you're running a school, you can run your football fields at a different time than your baseball fields, right? And in a small controller scenario, we still have all of the independent station programming that allows us to manage each station. But I have had guys need more than 2 programs on an LC. So keep that in mind as a limitation. Anything on that, Danny?
Not on the software side. The argument is, yes, if we're 6, 12, 18, can 2 programs suffice? If we have multiple hydro zones, multiple irrigation methods, we might want a little bit more separation. We haven't seen a problem with having LC Plus, Pro 3, and even some OXRs on one particular site, the mixed model, if you will. I don't know if that's a manufacturer preferred or not, but we've definitely done that. And it's worked out for us.
See, what happens out in the field is where I come in, right? Like, it might not be what the engineers recommend, but I always love to see inventive ways of using the technology.
There you go. As
long as you can support it.
Yep.
All right. So now that's the whole qualifier on software, right? You just need to know that we're going to have the features that you're looking for on the controller that you buy. And again, if you want those OptiFlow features, the XR controller is the way to go. Now we are going to talk about what I go through to understand the hardware configuration, to replace the controller on the wall, right? Most of the time, WeatherTRAK is a retrofit solution. So we're going in, we're taking out the old controller, we're putting in the new one. What do I need to know about that old controller to get the right replacement? And first and foremost, is it a 2-wire controller? Second of all, how many stations are we trying to manage with this controller? And this is big for you, right, Danny? This is part of your expertise, is knowing that different configurations are allowed, and consolidating controllers is a big piece of what you do for your customers. Yeah.
No doubt. You know, and to be frank with you, this is why I wanted to have this topic covered. We're very much in the retrofit game. You know, we're working with HOAs that are on their second, third, fourth, fifth, you know, controller manufacturer. And what we can do with the materials and how we've designed this new system based on the current hydraulics, current electronics available to us, it's very important. So, you know, the biggest consolidation, you know, we've done is out in Crystal Cove over in Newport Beach, 267 controllers down to 163 WeatherTRAK. So
Wow.
that's a little over 100 controllers that were consolidated. So a lot of
just think
72s.
of the savings that customer experiences by doing that, right? Like it does take a little bit more work on the front end and the installation part of it, but think of eliminating all of those subscriptions. Like that in itself is an annual savings of huge dollars.
Yeah, I mean, we were working with a lot of 72s, a lot of 96s. You know, that's where we learned we need a second POC key for the 48 stations if we have two. You know, so that's where we learned, right? You know, you have like these reach extension kits, you know, for the 72s and the 96s. If we don't have the 30-inch, you know, between the two boxes, yeah. So we're very much, you know, custom building these things and knowing, you know, where your chassis are, what you've pre-built for the existing enclosures. You know, I was the big fan of the CWM for the longest time, and then I'm like, well, you know, instead of putting the CWM in a top entry, let's actually put the CH4 in that was designed for your top entry.
There you go.
You know, and what's nice is that, you know, you guys have already done your homework. So I'm not out there with tin snips or, you know, Simpson strong ties trying to make brackets and
I have seen them done. I have seen them zip tied together.
I hear you. Yeah. Sheet metal screws can go a long way.
Yep.
But no, now we have a professional, you know, part number that just, you know, easily dropped in and designed that way. We've been very successful with that.
That's awesome. All right, so you're jumping a little bit ahead because we're going to talk about those chassis mount controllers and show them off. So I want to get back to this, and then I'll come back to you on that consolidation question when we get to those slides. So when I'm analyzing the hardware, first I look and see if it's 2-wire. Then I check and see how many stations the controller needs to manage, or if I'm consolidating controllers, what the total stations need to manage at that location are. I look at the existing enclosure, see if it's a wall mount, see if it's a pedestal mount. If it's an existing pedestal, we have some options that we'll talk about there. And then in certain parts of the country, salinity is a serious issue. So if you're buying the powder-coated controllers, they're going to wear out a lot quicker. And so you might need the stainless steel in your solution. So taking that to the next step, right? Do you need a 2-wire controller? Well, here in the WeatherTRAK family of controllers, that automatically eliminates the LC controller. The LC is not capable of 2-wire configurations out of the box, but the Pro 3 and the OptiFlow XR are available in 2-wire configurations. Just like the LC is not compatible with OptiFlow. There is no way to get an OptiFlow controller all the way to, or an LC controller all the way to OptiFlow, where there are ways that we can make the Pro 3s work in certain OptiFlow applications. We'll talk about, or we did talk about that in the OptiFlow training and in the OptiFlow session. So if you want more details on those, I did a 3-part arc on OptiFlow. Go back to that and check out those sessions for details on that. All right, how many stations? Now, this is the deal buster. Like, this is the #1 question that I look at. How many stations do I need? Or how many valves? How many zones do I have that this controller is managing? The WeatherTRAK LC has two different models, one a 6, 12, and 18 station model, the other a 24, 30, and 36 station model. So LC can handle anything from the smallest at 6 stations to 36 stations. So if that is your if that's an application match, the LC is still in the wheelhouse, where you have much higher station count availability out of both the Pro 3 and the XR controllers. With the Pro 3s and XRs, we go from 12 stations all the way to 96 stations. And to Danny's point earlier, having these 72 and 96 station model controllers really is where that opportunity to consolidate lives, where we're replacing multiple 24 station controllers. If they're all on the wall right next to each other, we can fit as many as 4 of those suckers into an existing WeatherTRAK and only pay the one subscription for it. All right, now let's talk about the configurations. LC almost always going to be a wall mount operation, right? This is just a small controller for a small application. LC is light commercial, right? So the enclosure is always going to be the plastic box. If that makes a difference for security reasons, we're going to qualify out of the LC. But if the plastic box is okay, then this enclosure might work for you. There is a way we sell a controller-specific pedestal that will allow you to make an LC into a pedestal mount controller. So if you have pedestal mounts and on every other facet, the LC is an application match, we can do that for you, for sure.
Is that the CPED right there?
That is it is a LC CPED. So it actually has a spot that you just fit that controller right into the top. It comes with an adapter on top. So it's a little bit different than the Pro 3 CPED. But I do feature the Pro 3 CPED right here. So when we're talking about the Pro 3 and XR, we're looking at the wall mount configurations first, right? These are designed to take down the old controller and put the new controller up. If that controller lives on the wall, easy peasy. One thing to keep in mind is if you have wall mount controllers and you want to go to a high station count model, the 72 or 96 station controllers, that really is a lot of wires to fit into one of these little boxes. And so the 72 and 96 station looks like 2 controllers side by side. It's 2 valve wire terminal boards, one in this box, one in this box, but only one command module, only one WeatherTRAK computer in there that manages both of those. So if you're doing wall mounts, you got to leave room for a second controller right next to it. And if you're trying to find the most cost-effective way to make a pedestal controller out in the field, this CPED option is the cheapest way to get to pedestal mount, is to buy a CPED and a wall mount controller. That's because when we go to the pedestal mount controllers, they're fancy and they're beautiful and they have a lot more steel involved with them. But if you have pedestals out in the field, or you want pedestals out in the field, we have a full variety of pedestal mount controllers, strong box enclosures, heavy duty or heavy gauge steel, light gauge steel. I prefer the top entry because as a water nerd, I like to stand up and manage the software and push the buttons. So often you're sitting on the nearest rock trying to manage these.
On a Home Depot bucket for 3 hours?
I have my own, I bring my own chair with me when I've got a project going on.
Yeah.
And then this is what Danny was talking about. This is where I'm going to bounce it back to you and let you talk about the chassis.
Fair enough.
Okay. I'm going to let you talk about chassis while they look at them.
There you go. Yeah, so I mean that's just it's a lot of fun to be had. The output, the output boards themselves, you're looking at four nuts with lock washers to take out the old back plate, put the new back plate in. One of the things that we do at Park West is we make sure we have a GFCI switch as well as a surge arrestor. So we're really setting the controller up for success just in case we have any dirty power coming in, or that rotor just so happens to be in line of sight to that controller.
Ooh, just one sec. Let me take one step back, okay? So when we're talking about the chassis mount operation, the chassis mount offering, this is a solution that allows you to keep an existing enclosure out in the field, just take the guts out of it and replace it with WeatherTRAK guts, right? We leave the steel mounted in the field and just take the controller out of it and put WeatherTRAK in there.
There you go. Yeah, so if everyone can see the top entry, the CH4, and then Ben, if you go back to that your last slide, you can see that that fits right into that top entry. So you get your angle, you'll get your angle plate with the panel, and then the output board, you know, slides right into there, and very clean, very clean. You know, we'll try to use 14 gauge, you know, wire from the field wire to the controller, but we've been very successful with even multi-strand, and that really gives us a nice clean look. To go from, you know, the output boards to the field wires, and not have that rat's nest that we're all used to. So, you know, we make sure that when the retrofit is in there, we vacuum everything out. We make sure that the filter, the vent screens are properly in place, and you know that just makes sure that we're going to get the product life that we're looking for. I mean, these are, you have a very robust electronics. But that doesn't mean that a frog or you know, a snail is still not going to do damage, because they have and they will, and
they will.
They do.
Conformal coating is now a thing. We'll see it less, but we'll still see it, right? I've opened plenty of frogs fried on controller boards, not on just WeatherTRAK. That is universal truth.
Yeah, and then of course your rats want to get nice and warm. Your mice want to get warm, so they know where to go.
Yep. And then we do have one that I want to highlight, the controller specific replacement. Maxicom was for many years the industry leader in water management. So a lot of people who invested in Maxicom back in the day are finding it long in the tooth, are finding it kind of a dated sort of water management system now. And so we've got a whole business model just going straight into those Maxicom controllers, just straight replacement. They've got their own pedestal. We fit right inside of it, and we can pick up where they left off.
Yeah, we've installed about a dozen of those CH7s inside. We call them the guillotine enclosures, the little square, you know, top entry, but the guillotine plate that comes down.
Yep.
That was a really interesting, really clean install. You know, I was really happy with that. It was one of those things where I trusted the distributor, and he delivered, you know, and gave us a nice, clean solution there.
Hey, Suze, the difference between an S-PED and a C-PED is cold rolled steel is C-PED, S-PED is stainless steel. So depending on what controller you're looking at going on top, you want to make that match up. If you've got a stainless steel top, you want a stainless steel bottom as well. All right, we are zooming in on time. Got 2 minutes left, so it's time to bust out a conclusion here. All right, so what we want to do is, when deciding what WeatherTRAK to put on your existing site, keep all of this stuff in mind, right? If you're considering using an LC, remember it's got a 6 to 36 station capacity. We've got only the simple flow programming in there. Only one point of connection and one main line is its ideal setup, right? And the plastic enclosure, the 2 and 4 programs are stuff to keep in mind as we discuss it. And then the warranty, the 3-year warranty. And I know that that's something that Danny's going to want to talk about on this upcoming slide, because the warranty does make a difference in his sales process. So the LC is a great match on the simple systems, right? I think of this as pocket parks in a city, right? The small HOAs that have that kind of setup, even large residential, the contractors who are taking care of big houses that have water management needs on a commercial level. I think the LC is a great match. Or, you know, if you have a series of banks, you know, they all fit that footprint of simple flow management and needing central control.
Ben, before we go to the Pro 3, 2 things on these LC pluses that we had to learn. We do need the flow key. They're not flow enabled right off the bat.
Flow is an option, not a standard feature, yes.
Yep. And then if we are to put those LCs into stainless steel enclosures, we need to go with that pancake antenna. We need to make sure, you know, it's like putting your cell phone in a microwave.
Exactly right.
Right.
So if you do have an application where you're trying to put an LC box inside of a stainless steel enclosure, there is a part number for a pancake antenna that attaches to the LC controller. It's a different adapter. And so you want to have the antenna on the outside of the stainless steel box. Great point, Danny. All right. And then we go to Pro 3s, right? Now we're in the world of really the big dog conventional systems that WeatherTRAK is used to. This is built for conventional or two-wire systems. So if you have that two-wire system, this is the first model that will make sense for you. Up to 96 station capacity, up to 4 points of connection. And this is something that you need to understand as well. The 4 points of connection, we can manage as many as 4 master valve flow sensor setups, but each board has the capability of managing 1. So a board is 24 stations, 1 master valve, and 1 flow sensor. So if you have a 24 station controller, you can listen to 1. If you have 2 boards, which is a 36 station controller or better, then you can do 2. Danny, do you want to talk about the optional second flow key?
Yeah. Like Ben mentioned, if you happen to have what were two 24 station controllers, even if it was a single water meter or single water source, but now you have 2 POCs, it's financially feasible to go to a 48 station combined, your low voltage combined, cancel even one of your power supplies to feed just your single 48. But do make sure that you include that second POC key. So that way, both point of connections can be wired in properly to that Pro 3. The last thing you want to do, and then we really don't want you to do, is to double up on the master valve or flow sensor terminal. They belong in their own slots.
Don't do it.
Yeah, don't do that. That's how you fry stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's very feasible. And Ben, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's like you said, 36 station or above can take in the second POC. So if you have, 2 12 stations with 2 POCs, that's not going to work. You're going to have to, now, correct me if I'm wrong, can we then put in, like, say, a 42 station controller, have to go beyond the capacity of the low voltage just so we can get the second POCs, even if we're only running 18 valves or so?
Yeah, so you need the 36 station controller at least to run both flow sensors.
There you go.
Right?
So even if you only have
12 stations, if you've got 2 points of connection, we need a 36 station controller with an optional second flow key.
And I believe that would still be more cost effective, than even putting, like, say, 2 controllers in a flow share. That would still be more feasible for you to do it that way.
And then where this really comes into play is for the 72 and 96 station controllers. If you have an advanced configuration where you're trying to manage 3 points of connection, you need at least the 72. And if you've got 4 points of connection, you need the 96, because that gives us enough terminals to listen to all of your master valve and flow sensor setups.
And the 72 is three POCs default, and the 96 being 4.
Right, that optional second flow key is an anomaly of the 48 station configuration.
There you go.
All right, so this is a great application for really all of our commercial landscapes. This is the workhorse of the WeatherTRAK family. We see it on all the Walmarts and all the Lowe's and all the land, and is great for schools and any sort of commercial applications. Now, we get to the OptiFlow XR, we've already sort of qualified. This is something that either you want to go all the way with and get the OptiFlow in place, or you don't, right? If you need OptiFlow features, this is your controller. And we've got all of the distinctions that we've talked about. It's very similar to the Pro 3, except it's capable of flow management in the cloud and flow optimization. So that is when you will go to the OptiFlow XR controller. So sites with...
And I do want to add, as a consumer of all sorts of fun stuff, there's 2 ways that manufacturers handle warranty. It's either I'm going to do every single thing I can to avoid paying you out on that warranty, and then there's the companies that actually do work with you on the warranties, and that is HydroPoint. We have had some warranty items come in, for one reason or the next, and we're not fighting with the manufacturer. We're not trying to, justify the warranty. It's been a very smooth process where when we've had to turn in warranty items. So I think that's a really big deal in today's world is how these manufacturers go up against paying out warranties and replacing materials. So you guys have been very, very helpful in that capacity.
And this is driven by the difference between the 5-year warranty on the Pro 3 and the 10-year warranty on the XR, right? That 10-year warranty is a super value.
Well, give me an example of a product that has a 10-year warranty. Our cars don't, cell phones don't. I mean, there's not that many electronics specifically that have a 10-year warranty, even a 5-year warranty, We're going to work a lot of things out, within the first couple of years, let alone after year 5, year 10. That's pretty impressive.
But I think that this speaks to our mentality of trying to deliver outcomes and trying to develop partners, right? You don't develop partners by leaving people hanging out to dry. You develop partners by standing by your product and helping them find the best solutions. That's kind of where we're committed. All right, so let us move on. We have a product comparison in the price guide. So if you want to go through all of the details, there is something that spells it out for you in the price guide. And that is where I finish the presentation for today. Go back to my friend Danny Smith and ask him. Now, this was a big deal for me because you're the first 2-time guest, I had to create a new question. We've already heard what WeatherTRAK saves you. So I'm thinking, what is your favorite WeatherTRAK feature? One feature that you like to see or to sell that really makes a difference in your process?
I'm going to have to give you 2. I'm sorry.
All right.
Yeah, the app was already impressive when it was just a manual operation, but the fact that we can go in there and now program, that really bridged the gap for a lot of our guys.
And mobile mapping.
Yep. Oh, because I have everything assetized for sure, everything. Park benches, bathrooms.
Nice.
But just the ability to take our programming skill to the next level through the app was very impressive. We've cleaned up a lot of our, sites, took them to the next level because of that ability to do that. And then the second feature, which I don't believe anybody else has done, is your master valve override. Programming and having a reoccurring task of a master valve override. So if I have, the pressure wash crew at the commercial building on Saturdays, 6 a.m. to noon, I can have those normally closed master valves open. Controller knows about it. Flow sensor knows about it. Master valve knows about it. And those guys can do their thing. So the day of, bleeding my quick couplers to steel main line and then getting air in my lines and blowing out main lines, knowing when I can have my master valve open for an auxiliary use, for a secondary controller use that a hunter node that we can't, seem to fix. Master valve override and then the programming behind it, setting it up, for months down the road or what have you is pretty darn impressive.
That's awesome. Yeah, you've covered my favorite application, covering those battery operated valves that are the bane of my existence. That master valve override is very handy in that. All right, Danny, thank you so much. Let me finish out, give the plug for next week's show. We've got Perry coming in, talking about installation stuff. So we will stay on the kind of outside the box. We're not talking about features. We're talking about what goes into the installation process. We've talked this week about choosing the right controller. We'll talk next week about installing it and kind of the earmarks of a quality installation. We've got Perry Brugman, who's a great guest. He is the vice president of the Ohio Irrigation Association and owner of Total Quality Horticultural Solutions. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing you there. And Danny Smith, thank you so much for making time for us this morning. I'd like to say thank you to everybody who made time for us, but especially you, and being a great second-time guest.
Glad to be here.
And why don't you take us out? You have any messages for the group before we call it good?
Well, we just went past July irrigation month, but you know, how about this? I call it the September 30, if you guys remember this. Check out your ETs. What happens to your ETs in September going into October? We lose about 30 ET, so we need to make sure our programming is good going into October. If our WeatherTRAK is set up correctly, we're taken care of. But for those of us that don't have the smart controllers running the way that we need to, make sure as we go into October, rainfall, what have you, that your programming is dialed in, because that's when we can get the most water waste, in my opinion, is your September into October. So pay attention to that programming.
Nice. I like it. A good tip to finish out the session. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.